And we are live. Hello, Twins territory. Welcome to Twins Daily Offseason Live. Oh, man, it is exciting to be back with you. And with all this winter meetings action, it's cold outside. We got lots of snow up here in Minnesota, but everybody can huddle together outside around this hot stove that we have this offseason. I'm Sweet Lou Hennessy. I'll be hosting tonight's episode with our good friends here. Just to my left, we have Mr. Nick Nelson. What's going on, Nick?
Not much. Good to be here. Good to see John's bright red face there from Orlando.
Yeah, lucky us. Lucky us. And like you said, this is Mr. John Bonus, the Twins geek. What do we think, John? How's it going down there?
It's great. It's very, the air conditioning here, very chilly.
Ooh,
very
good.
chilly. Yeah, I had to put on a little pullover. That's why the flushed face. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good deal. Well, we have a lot to dive into here. I mean, it's gonna be a fun little episode. We want to talk some off-season news and notes. Guys, how about this? Why don't we start here? This is something that I don't want to say broke, but something that Dan Hayes wrote, or Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic said a couple days ago when he kind of poured some cold water on the trade speculation regarding the Twins' top three stars: Byron Buxton, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez. He also included the term that the Twins might have some, quote, mild flexibility when it came to spending. What do we think about this? Is this kind of different from what we were expecting going into this offseason? Nick, why don't we start with you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my expectation was that they would be moving kind of aggressively to try to move these guys, just kind of given where they're at. So a little surprising, but also I don't know what else you'd kind of expect them to say outwardly at this point, right? They don't want to make it seem like they're out trying to push these guys on any front. So a little skeptical, but I would take it as encouraging. But the mild flexibility, yeah, it's like if you're not going to add significantly to help out this core, which was the worst in baseball in the second half, is it even worth holding on to them? I think that's the big question, right?
Sure. Bonus, how about you? What did you think when you first saw that reporting?
Well, I thought it was similar to what we kind of thought coming out of the GM meetings, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I think it's what we've been hinting about this a lot. What has been muddling the waters is that alternate markets have been talking about Ryan and Pablo, which, can mean that they just don't have much to write about, but it can also mean that the Twins, while, telling us they're not necessarily that motivated to move them, are in fact continuing to reach out to people. And I think what we found out is we were reading it correctly kind of after the GM's meetings, that for the most part, they really did want to hang on to the players that they had. And I think we kind of need to understand what mild flexibility means. Based on the conversation we had yesterday with Falvey, or the interview that we had yesterday with Falvey, it basically means that he can bring things to ownership and feels like there might be some buy-in depending on what options are available. He talked a number of times, like 3 or 4 times during that interview, if you go through the transcript, about his job is to bring options to ownership. And that's his job every offseason. Right. But it's even more important this offseason because you've got new potential ownership. And how much that new potential ownership has already been sort of brought into the equation, has already been educated on what Major League Baseball it's like to run a Major League Baseball team or to own a Major League Baseball team, is a little bit in question, because I'm not sure how much they are supposed to have access to that right now, or whether or not they're supposed to be reporting to that ownership right now. But it sounds like some way or the other that has been, informally being introduced. And, whether that means there is room for a $10 million slugger on this team, I personally don't think so. Okay. But it's really hard for us to kind of determine that. And frankly, I'm not even sure they know. I think we're kind of getting back to the early Falvey years before they were really buying in on, say, Josh Donaldson or Carlos Correa or something, where they are clearly waiting the market out. And if a bargain option comes along, if a $12 million guy is available for $9 million, do they go back to ownership and say, I know we didn't plan on spending $9 million, but this is a really good deal. We got to do this. That might be the kind of mild flexibility that they might have.
You brought up Carlos Correa and Josh Donaldson. I mean, even those deals themselves were kind of waiting out the market. What I don't
Right. Well, they were, and I mean,
February.
I would also give the example of Nelson Cruz.
Sure.
And Nelson Cruz was a prime example of them waiting out the market into 2019. And frankly, even when they re-signed him in 2021, they waited out the market to some extent on that. I still feel like that's higher than they're going to end up shooting, but I think they seem to think that they've got some. I don't know if they have a better view of the market or a different view of the market than I do or not, but they seem to think that they've got some options to improve this team. And I mean, to be fair, the two things they really need are the two things that the market almost always has, or at least has a couple of hidden gems in it, and that is a power, a first base bat, a bat first player, and a relief pitcher. And those are two things that are always available on the market, provided you're willing to spend a little bit of money without trying to go to the premier ones. And one of the questions we asked Falvey right at the end of yesterday's session was, why should Twins fans get excited about you shopping in the bargain area of the store again, right? And he said, and I think this is a pretty decent way to look at it, is that the thing about it is that there's always some premier agents that sign, and then there's that next tier of very good players, and they all think they're going to be the one to sign right after the big players sign. Right. Like, once we get this guy out of the way, I'm going to be the one that's going to sign. But there's like 6 of them, and sometimes one of those guys doesn't get to sign. And that's when that it can be simple. It's not so much bargain bin as much as like the music stops and somebody's left without a chair, or that chair is not as nice a chair as they thought it was going to be. And so, yes, there is some bargain shopping aspect to it, but he does feel that sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean they're a lesser player. That just means that they're the one that didn't commit early enough, and their timing was off on the market.
At Derek Shelton's press conference to announce him as the new manager, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that. When we were talking to Falvey in a scrum afterwards, he didn't even bring up the fact of like maybe looking for a slugger, of looking for a hitter. It was mostly talking about, we know we need to bring in a couple of arms for the bullpen, which we kind of decimated at the trade deadline. Now it seems like this week he and Jeremy Zoll have both kind of acknowledged, like, yeah, we're going to be looking to add an impact bat. Well, I should say a power hitting bat, at least, into this group. I think Jeremy Zoll even mentioned maybe 2 bats in one of his comments.
He said with a bit of thump. Yeah, I read that quote again and I thought at the time I didn't feel like he was really talking about an impact bat, but maybe they are. Maybe they're looking for somebody who can. I mean, we kind of thought. This time last year, we thought Jose Miranda was playing first base.
Sure.
Right. And when they brought in Ty France, we were all surprised on the first day that not even the first day the pitchers and catchers report. It was the first day of the position players report. We were a week into spring training almost, when they basically said, no, Ty France is pretty much our first baseman.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, like this is a little bit different than we expected. And, it might be that they are looking for somebody that is going to be a, more or less their full-time first baseman, with Cody Clemens getting a lot of at-bats, either as a left-handed complement to that player or as a left-handed person in and around the diamond, maybe maybe spotting Keishel occasionally or something like that.
Sure. Very interesting. We have a comment here from our friend at Twins Daily Sestos. He says, John, love what you've done with your hair. What is the general vibe in Orlando? Do a little name dropping. So I don't know. Has it been fun kind of rubbing elbows with people? Have you gotten to chat with people from other markets, stuff like that?
First of all, I'll just point out, I've worked 58 years to lose all this hair. So yes, I love what I've done with it as well. It's been interesting. It's my first winter meetings. And, in a lot of ways, it's very similar to spring training, and that you've got a lot of scrums with management or coaches or so on that you can kind of get things. But it's and it's also it is a little like baseball Comic-Con, kind of like there's a lot of people here. It's very crazy in the hallways. You run into people. It's sort of an industry-wide meet and greet, not just from a baseball standpoint, but from a baseball media standpoint, or from a media standpoint in general. So that's been pretty cool. It's a huge media room. You do get a chance to talk to, well, certainly to the people on your own team, but you also get a chance to interview or at least sit in on, long interviews with the managers. Every manager is in front of a microphone, in front of a group of people for 20 minutes over those 2 days. And so you get some time on that. So yeah, it's been a valuable experience.
Nice. Hey, so going back to the point you were talking about of, waiting out the market, maybe some of these guys from one tier slip down to another one. Nick, how about you? Any names that you could think of that you would really hope that maybe the Twins would be aiming for when it comes to guys kind of slipping in the market a little bit? Maybe a 3-year guy ends up signing a 1-year deal with an option, a 2-year deal, something like that. Is there any collection of names that you would hope that they would be searching for?
Yeah, I mean, any bat, right? I mean, I think a big talking point has been that the right-handed hitting outfielders, the kind of guys that maybe the Twins would be looking for right now as a compliment to what they have, are really hard to find. There's a lot of lefty hitting outfielder corner guys out there, which of course the Twins are very abundant in. A reliever, you could maybe see it happening, but I just can't convince myself that the Twins are going to spend any money on the bullpen. It's just against their philosophy.
Sure.
They traded all these guys at the deadline because they view relievers as these fungible assets. So even if they have the money to spend, I think it's going to probably be very opportunistic and maybe going to be dependent on where they move some guys away this offseason. I still think there's got to be some moves to shake up this 40-man roster. The structure of it is just very unsound.
Sure. Yeah.
The name I heard outside of, now this is not from any Twins officials, right? This is just pure speculation by people that follow the team, was, would Rhys Hoskins fall into their price range? Like, would Rhys Hoskins fall to the point where he's a $6 million 1-year signee, which is, I think, kind of the level that I think here the Harrison Bader level that we saw last year is sort of about the most we can expect for a big signing right now, or for a positional signing right now. That to me is sort of the over under of whether or not they're really going above and beyond.
Yeah. We can talk more about some other options that we were thinking about here, but another thing that was brought up at the winter meetings here was the fact that they were thinking about having Luke Keeschel, spend some time in the outfield last year, and then the broken arm kind of derailed that plan a little bit. If they do decide to go that route and see if he could stick in maybe left field, something like that, that kind of changes the layout of this team a little bit too, because Keeschel is going to be pretty much an everyday player, essentially. And especially if they're trying to load up on righties, it kind of opens things up in the infield a little bit if he's manning left field. So I thought that was a little interesting tidbit. What did you guys think about when we heard Luke Keeschel's name as a potential outfield option?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, he came up playing outfield, right? And I don't know if anyone's really sold on him as an infielder with his arm. There was definitely some plays last year at second base where you say, I don't know. He's definitely not going to be on the left side of the infield. So that's pretty limiting. I've heard first base mentioned as a possibility for him, but yeah, we're talking about how bad they need a right-handed complement. They do have Austin Martin as another kind of corner outfield guy who could maybe platoon a little bit with some of those lefty swingers. But Keeschel with his speed, definitely an intriguing outfield prospect, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, Keeshel's interesting as an outfield glove. He's interesting as an outfield bat. He's also interesting as a second base bat, for that matter.
Sure.
I don't think we've really seen his arm and what he can or cannot do. I was surprised how much time they talked about Keeschel not playing in the outfield last year and wanting to give him some time there this year. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out in spring training. I also kind of wonder if they wouldn't mind trying it at second base this year with the idea that, we also got Kalen Culpepper coming up here. And I wonder what the trio of Culpepper, Keeschel, and Brooks Lee ends up shaking out in terms of, who ends up being at second base, who ends up being at shortstop, who ends up being someplace else. So that's another thing but I mean, that's going to be that's a late 2026 development at the earliest.
Yeah.
So I don't really see I guess the other option at second base is Cody Clemens. Essentially you're kind of swapping Keeschel and Clemens in that role. I don't get the feeling right now that they are looking to bring on any additional middle infielders. I think they seem to be thinking that Kreidler is going to be their backup shortstop.
Okay.
We didn't specifically get into that, but we did ask about his defense. They said they're pretty excited about it. So that's what I think. I think that is, we're going to have Brooks Lee at starting shortstop, Kreidler as the sort of the primary backup, with Ryan Fitzgerald, sitting in the wings there at AAA probably.
Okay, cool. Chad threw that in the chat there of what are the thoughts on shortstop. Like you said, I think ideally Culpepper becomes an option if all goes well later on in the season, but it's going to be hard to predict that he would be up in the front half of the season. And
Yep.
for the time being, they are at least indicating that they are comfortable with Ryan Kreidler. They also have Ryan Fitzgerald, who could be an option there. So I think that they're probably set at the moment. Then again, you really never know. Any chatter about potential arms in the bullpen, whether they're looking for lefty help? Right now they have Cody Funderburk as the top lefty option, Connor Prelip waiting in the wings, but chances are he's probably, they want to see what they have a little bit longer at the AAA level before considering him for a bullpen role. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we'll see is, I will say this. I know we had a conversation today with them about, they have spent a lot of the time. And in fact, I had the question coming into this. I heard from a Twins official, they wanted it to be known before they got into the winter meetings that they're probably not trading Lopez or Ryan or Buxton.
Sure.
That they did not, that was not going to be their focus of the winter meetings. And I think they did that to kind of clear their plate, that they didn't want a bunch of teams wanting to talk about a trade with them, when in fact what they wanted to do was talk to agents and agencies about some of the available players that they had. I think they did that just to free up their own bandwidth, essentially, at these meetings. And so they have spent a lot of time, I think, over the last 48 hours meeting with various agents and agencies and talking about free agents. And I think what they're doing, as what we said before, is they're waiting for the market to come to them on the relievers. Will they be trying to get a left-handed reliever? I think so. Yeah. I mean, they've certainly have the need for it. They certainly have shown that they like having that role player on their roster. I don't think they fully trust Funderburk in that, nor do I think they should. So I will be a little surprised if we don't get a left-handed reliever sometime in this offseason. But again, that kind of depends a little bit on what the market brings to them. If left-handed reliever, they mentioned specifically Danny Colome as an example of somebody who they inquired about early last offseason. Everybody, he and his agent wanted to kind of see what, they could get, and wanted to see what happens when some of the guys above him signed. And then come January, he was still sitting out there. $4 million didn't look so bad, and he took it. And so, I mean, I think that is probably what we are going to see again with presumably with another left-handed reliever, or frankly with several other relievers.
Okay. Nick, any specific relievers that you would hope that they would kind of look into? I think there's some old friends that maybe we could talk about down the line a little bit, but I don't think this is going to be an area where they spend a lot of big bucks, but there are some veteran guys who do have experience late in the games, guys that we know that they've trusted in the past and who have had recent success with other teams. I would love to see them look at some of those guys. Anybody come to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, this is where just a little bit of spending flexibility makes a big difference, right? Because we saw a couple off seasons ago, they went the really cheap route. They end up with Jay Jackson and Josh Staumont and kind of really the bottom of the barrel, the guys who are barely getting more than a minor league deal. You go up just a couple $1 million to that Danny Coulombe level, and there's just a lot higher potential and a lot more reliability to the extent that you're going to get that with free agents. So we already missed out on our guy Emilio Pagan, unfortunately. Oof. I know that would have really roused Twins territory, but
I think Colome is available.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, he'd be a great pickup. Why not? Wait, are we talking Coulombe or Colome?
Colome.
Jeez.
Okay, no.
How about this? John, another really fun part of the winter meetings happened today when it was the MLB draft lottery, and it looked like you were able to attend. Do you want to talk a little bit about that experience, about some things maybe you didn't expect from that and what that was like? Nick, I'm going to throw you in the backstage here because we have Mr. Jamie Cameron here, and he's going to hop on stage and give his thoughts about the Twins and their draft position. But John, how about your experience of being at the lottery?
So the event itself is kind of interesting in that they take a very large ballroom and try to turn it into a TV studio, essentially, right? And that means, but then they've also got, 100, journalists trying to pack into the side of said ballroom, and some are being quiet and some are not being so quiet. The door is opening and closing and all this while the thing's going on. It was interesting. It was interesting to see sort of a TV studio and the interaction between the host and the rest of the production company. Like, okay, when do I come in? What's the time on this? Blah, blah, blah. So that was all very interesting. The guys who were behind, that represented each of the teams are for the most part being quiet, but joking around a little bit offside. So, I mean, all of that was cool. I was really impressed with I'm afraid I don't know the host at MLB Network, but I thought I was really impressed how he basically was tasked with reading a list of 19 names and saying, and 18 is the Marlins, and 17 is, and somehow kind of managed to make it a dramatic reading that lasted 20 minutes and didn't bore me to tears. It wasn't really, so I was really impressed with his ability to do that. We were definitely paying attention to the teams that got passed up as things were climbing. Like, we knew very early on that the Giants were a lottery team because they should have been one of those first 4 or 5 picks that was announced in like the 15 to 20 range, and instead they had clearly gotten a lottery pick. People were definitely holding their breath. We did find out after that if you get the number 1 pick, your GM gets a call and says you got the number 1 pick before the lottery begins.
Oh, okay.
And so as such, all of the GMs are careful about where they are watching it and such, because they don't want people to guess one way or the other. And they also kind of want their own people to be surprised. So they don't want to, because they don't want to, they don't want they don't want it to leak from them either. So basically Falvey and Zoll just kind of hid in Falvey's room but they knew as they were being yelled at, as they were being counted down, that they didn't have number 1.
Okay.
And so by the time it starts, they already know they're not number 1. They know that they were supposed to be, a number 2, and they had the second best chance. And the question in their minds is, how far did we fall? Did we stay at number 2, or did we fall beyond that? And they're having a debate as to, how angry they're going to be at this pick versus that pick. And what we heard is that they had varying opinions on it, but they knew that Sean Johnson, the Twins scouting director, really wanted to be in the top 3. Now, we asked why. And we got an answer like, basically, we're not totally sure. You're going to have ask Sean. Was it just because he likes the number 3, or is it because he thought there were 3 really good prospects, or is it because, there's 2 really good prospects, but then number 1, you get all the signing bonus, you get to kind of pick through people. The impression was there's a trio of guys they really like, so they were really happy with number 3.
Okay.
Very happy with number 3. But of course, we are 8 months out from that pick, and there's going to be a lot of jockeying. And they mentioned a couple of players, including Skeens, who kind of came up the rankings in a hurry at the end. So you never really know, what's available right now in next July or not. So but that was the experience here, at least.
Cool. Okay. Well, there are some pretty big ramifications about the positioning of the draft here. So, Jamie, why don't you talk to us a little bit about this? For those who don't know, Jamie Cameron here does a fantastic job for Twins Daily and a host of other sites covering all things prospects. The draft that comes up each and every year. You can follow him on the Destination of the Show podcast, which is highly recommended. Jamie, what did you think about this?
Yeah. What's going on, guys? Great to be here. Yeah, so I was consuming this draft lottery from 30,000 feet between Chicago and Rhode Island on extremely sketchy American Airlines Wi-Fi. So wasn't the greatest. But I will say, someone asked, I think, a relevant question, which I think we can kind of tee up how the Twins wound up here. And basically someone said, talk me into picking 3rd not being a bad outcome for the Twins. I think there's a couple of ways to think about it, right? One is when we consider a draft class, we think about pick capital and financial capital available to teams. Obviously, you want a lot of both. The Twins falling 1 slot probably removed about 700,000-ish from their bonus pool, but they're going to end up in the top 5 or 6 teams in terms of financial capital when the bonus pools are released ahead of the draft next year. Obviously, still having a number 3 selection. There's a clear number 1 in this draft in Rochtelowski. I think there's a guy who's currently sitting number 2 and the best prospect in the class, who's a high school shortstop out of Texas named Grady Emerson. Guys 3 through 10, you can argue a number of different directions, and there's buckets of guys here, right? So you have a couple of college aces, you have some college bats who are maybe a little bit safer, more well-rounded players, and then you have some higher risk, high reward guys in guys like Justin LeBron, who's a college shortstop out of Alabama, and Jacob Lombard, who's another prep kid out of Florida. John's comment was really interesting. Super interesting if the Twins feel like they have a guy who they feel like they like a ton at third. I would say just in general, as some framing for folks, I think this draft class is going to shape up to be the best since 2023. We remember that one of course, because the Twins moved up in the inaugural draft lottery that gave them access to Walker Jenkins. And that was a draft where, there are kind of 5 guys who might ordinarily go number 1 in a typical class. This class is really, really strong. I think particularly strong in college hitting. And I think if we had to pick today, you could put decent money on the Twins taking a college bat with their first pick. There's a little bit of everything. So we'll see how things shake out here over the coming months. And I think it tees up the spring to be much more interesting, right? Because we've got a consensus number 1, a kind of a consensus number 2 guy. And as I think John mentioned in one of the threads we were talking in today, this makes the spring much more interesting for kind of separating out and tiering out the rest of the guys. And it'll make college baseball season and high school season much more fun for people to follow.
Well, absolutely. I mean, especially if you, especially excited for if you're a customer of a site like Twins Daily or a Limestone Pipeline, because I got to tell you, honestly, we're going to really want to know, hey, this person seems to be shining, or this person seems to be moving up. Like, it's what we see right now is, sort of a, 1A and then a 2 and then a 3 through 10. It could very well be like, oh no, it's 1, that's 2, 3. I already heard from somebody else. Oh, I like 1 above everybody else, but I think no difference between 2, 3, and 4. And I'm like, I wonder who 2, 3, and 4 are. I mean, so right. I mean, and again, it doesn't really matter because we're 8 months away.
Yeah.
So we've got a whole nother high school and base and college season to really evaluate these guys, and that's going to be the most important piece of evaluation as well. So, yeah, I think it's going to be fun to kind of as Twins fans, especially, to kind of keep an eye now on all of the college seasons and all of the high school prep prospects out there, and to kind of say, oh, well, that might be kind of interesting to see which one of those guys they end up going for and have a favorite. And I mean, that bonus pool money, as you mentioned, might mean that, they are able to pick up a couple of extra, pretty high quality prospects in the supplemental round that they've got, or second round or something like that they wouldn't normally have been able to have because they got the extra money because they were all the way up to number 3.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a moot point now because they don't have the number 1 pick, but Jamie, what did the Twins miss out on with Rakshalowski?
What did they miss out on? Well, they missed out on the clear consensus number 1 guy in this class. They missed out on a guy who pipeline grades as a 65 future value prospect. And they missed out on a guy who really checks every single box that you want in a player. Strong bat to ball skills, emerging power, outstanding defense at shortstop, gets rave reviews for his leadership. And I happen to...
And now he's going to play in the AL Central too.
Now he's going to play in the AL Central, and I'm glad you mentioned that, John, because one of the fun subplots of this draft lottery was it's actually bad for the Twins in that several other AL Central teams did really, really well. Like the White Sox are the undoubted winners of the draft lottery because they got number 1, and that was a prize. The Royals also moved up 10 spots from 16 to 6, which is huge. And we don't talk about it a ton, but the Royals are doing so much better with their player development in recent seasons and talent ID. So that's a fun subplot too. But Chalowski, I think, really checks all the boxes and also fits into that trend of like taking college guys who are going to move super, super quickly through the minors, such that I would expect him to be in contention for a starting job in the majors at the beginning of 2027. So he's going to be a pain in the butt for Twins fans for the next 6 or 7 years. So get used to it, guys.
Just great. You mentioned that
there's some... Jamie.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Jamie, you mentioned that this is going to be, you could really see the Twins going for a college hitter. Who are some of the other college hitters that you think that they could target at number 3? You mentioned Justin LeBron. You said there's some college arms too that maybe could move quickly too. Do you want to go over just 2 or 3 of those names that would be an eye on?
We'll do a little bit of name dropping here. I do think LeBron would be one of the names they would consider if he puts it all together. And there's some questions about the bat to ball skills and the approach. Right. He probably is the highest upside of the college guys remaining. You have wait for it, guys, a left-handed power-hitting corner outfielder who I'm really fond of, named AJ Gracia, who plays for Virginia. It's very much, best case scenario there is kind of like the Nick Kurtz type skill set of massive on-base and power numbers. Another college shortstop named Tyler Bell, who's really well thought of. Another right-handed hitting outfielder named Drew Burris, who plays for Georgia Tech, who I think posted a Diversity Plus north of 150 in both of his first 2 college seasons. And then another higher upside guy, great college baseball name, Sawyer Strasnider, who's an outfielder for TCU. Then the arms that you mentioned, Lou, I do think, and we're 8 months out, as John has mentioned, so all this is going to change. If you ask me today, I think we're probably a little too high for the arms and where they might go, but there's 2 in particular that I think are worth mentioning. Liam Peterson is a right-handed pitcher out of Florida, really high octane fastball that sits in the high 90s. Just needs to put it together a little bit more with the control and the command. And then Cam Fluke, folks might have seen him last season. He's a starting pitcher out of Coastal Carolina. Pitched them all the way to the College World Series Championship Series last year. Both of those guys have the potential to be playoff caliber starters. They throw really hard. Fluke has a great combination of an outstanding pitch mix, and he just throws, strikes for days, which is something that the Twins seem to care about in guys that they draft. So those are guys whose seasons I definitely monitor in addition to the cluster of college hitters there.
Good to know. B. Holdeman says the Twins have enough shortstops. Who are the good DHs in the draft? Good question there. So we'll keep an eye on some of those good hitters for sure. I think we also wanted to hear some input, Jamie, about, and John, you too, because the Rule 5 draft is coming up tomorrow, and the Twins have a pretty primo spot in that draft as well. Could the Rule 5 draft be something that Twins fans should be paying attention to come tomorrow afternoon? John, why don't you tell us what you're hearing so far? I'll add Nick back into the conversation too here.
Yeah, so we've been wondering about this over here because, frankly, I think the beat writers are running it because they're wondering how much they have to do Wednesday. There's not a lot going on here Wednesday. It's mostly the Rule 5 draft is what is going on, right? And so, the beat writers are kind of like, well, how much do we need to be around? Are we going to have any interviews, that sort of thing? And the big question was the Twins don't have a spot on their 40-man roster. They don't have an open spot on their 40-man roster. And you can't take a Rule 5 draft pick if you don't have a open spot on the 40-man roster. And as of 6 o'clock today, after the lottery, we hadn't heard anything about it. Now, what we heard today is that a spot might be opening up on the 40-man roster. And they have really up until 30 minutes before the Rule 5 draft to open up that spot on the 40-man roster. Now, what does that mean? Well, I mean, it could mean they're just going to cut somebody. They've got plenty of names they can cut, but it also might mean that they've got somebody that's interested in one of the, maybe lesser known players on the Twins roster that they think they can swap for somebody who's a prospect who doesn't have to be on the 40-man roster. And so that would allow them to sort of keep their depth, whatever what that's worth, on the 40-man roster, but also open up a spot such that they can grab a pitcher. It would make sense that they want to grab a pitcher, that they want to grab a prospect in the Rule 5 draft, because there's a lot of that's the sort of kind of player that you get in the Rule 5 draft pretty well. And I think they've got the number 5 overall pick. Is that right? And so anyway, there should be. Okay, number 4. Yeah, I'm having trouble remembering. And so, yeah, there's a lot of interest in whether or not they would be trying to do that. I mean, frankly, they could also try and grab a backup shortstop or a backup catcher or something like that if they wanted to as well. But odds are they would be going for an arm, probably say something like a AA or a AAA arm, somebody that's close to major league ready, to try to put in their bullpen and see if they can hang out in the back half of that bullpen for the year. So
okay. Before we get into some of the possibilities in the Rule 5 draft, Nick and I both came up with a few ideas there. If they're looking to clear some room, who are some candidates that we could see them, possibly removing from the 40-man roster?
Are you asking me? I mean, I think McCasker's on there. Mickey Gasper's on there.
Gasper, sure.
I think what we're talking about is more the hitting side than the pitching side. They spent the first, I think 6 of the first 7 guys they released from the 40-man roster to help clear space were pitchers, and the other one was Jose Miranda, who they'd clearly given up on. So I think you've got a few different position players that they could do it. Now, whether or not that, those are the guys that they would also be thinking about trading, I'm not sure. You might need to go a little higher level for that, or not. We'll see.
Nick, does anybody come to mind for you of who should maybe be on the hot seat if they are looking to clear some room on the roster?
I mean, yeah, the names John said, there's about 7 position players, I think, on the roster that you could cut. And I think maybe 5 or 6 of those guys might go unclaimed. So I think that's something that's definitely stood out to me as I look at the 40-man roster. Johnny Pareda is maybe another name. Do they really feel like they need to carry 3 catchers? They didn't really seem like they wanted to play him much late in the season. And yeah, they definitely need to clear out some position players and bring on some pitchers to try to bring some guys into this bullpen sphere. I would say not only does it make sense to draft a pitcher here in the Rule 5, it would make no sense not to draft a pitcher. You look at the state of this roster and some of the guys on there, there's just no way they can't upgrade a little bit by having their pick of all the guys that are going to be available to them at that 4th pick. There's a lot of kind of interesting names sitting out there that this is going to be an experimental bullpen by nature, right? So why not experiment with the guy and take a shot on him with all these openings that they have?
Yeah. Well, how about this? Let's dive right into it. Are there any names that are that maybe we should keep an eye on that they could select in the Rule 5 draft that you like, Nick?
Well, yeah, I don't have any deep research or anything, but I was looking around. I've looked at some of the names that are kind of being talked about most as sort of interesting targets. Some of the higher ranked prospects that were left unprotected. I think if I had to say one absolute most likely name that sticks out to me, if he's still there at number 4, would be a pitcher named Blake Burkhalter from the Braves. He's a 25-year-old right-hander. He's number 11 in their system at MLB Pipeline. Obviously has some flaws. There's a reason they kept him unprotected. But he kind of seems like one of those guys that you could just take him. He's kind of been a starter in the minors. You flip him into a reliever. You make him the 8th guy in your bullpen. You see what you got. There's a ton of guys like that out there that are sort of, 25, 27 to 27 or 28, have high strikeout rates, have control problems, have injury problems. That I think, why not go with one of those guys, right? Because the Twins are just really looking to hit on any kind of reliever they can with sort of the state that they're in.
A lot of times in this situation, you target somebody who you think is a starting pitcher, but you think you can hide him in the bullpen for a year and then bring him back to as a starting pitcher after that. I don't know that would necessarily make sense for the Twins. And I also wonder if they would be more willing to go with a safe pick than somebody that is, say, oh, he's got a great strikeout rate. We just got to get his walks under control.
Sure.
I'm not sure that they think that they can necessarily fix that in 6 weeks at spring training and go into the year with a guy who's walking a lot of people. They might opt for somebody who's got a little lower strikeout rate, a little better control, and somebody that they can just have a little more faith in that he's going to eat innings at the end of the bullpen.
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see what they do.
We saw that strategy last year with Iverson Castellano, who they selected from the Philadelphia Phillies, ended up returning him because he just could not throw strikes in spring training. I just saw he signed a minor league deal with the Colorado Rockies, actually. So hopefully if they do select somebody, it could be a little more fruitful than our friend Iverson ended up being. One name that I think that would be really exciting is a true reliever from the Tigers system. His name is RJ Pettit. He's 6'8", 300 pounds. He's a hard-throwing right-hander. He had a 2.44 ERA with 79 strikeouts in 66 innings last year. He has a really hard 83 to 85 mile per hour slider. Gets a lot of swings and misses from righties and lefties alike. This is all coming from Jonathan Mayo of MLB.com. He brings a mid-90s fastball and upper 80s changeup to the mound as well. If they are looking to fill a bullpen spot cheaply, he could be an exciting option. I'm getting images floating around in my head of Jumbo John Roush out there. It would be fun to get another big boy out on the mound in the bullpen there.
We just got to get a tattoo on his neck. Yeah,
there we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah.
A few other names that came to mind for me. I think I'm pronouncing this right. Alimber Santa. That is an 80 grade baseball name. The last name Santa. He might be a reliever in the long haul, but he has some starting experience too, I believe. 1.26 ERA, AAA last year. He's 22 years old, mid-90s fastball. These are things that you're going to be looking for. Maybe if they try to go the Iverson Castellano route, but yeah, we'll see. Here we got a comment from Holdeman again. Said that's a That's an old Greg sized man. I don't know. I don't know about that. Greg will tell you that he's taller.
Was that from Greg? Was that
It might
from
be
Greg?
one of
Probably one
Greg's
of his many
aliases.
pseudonyms. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that could be an interesting spot that they could look to make a selection in the Rule 5 draft here. How about this? Do the Twins have anybody that could be exposed tomorrow that they could end up losing to another team selecting in the Rule 5 draft? There's a few names that come to mind. John, you talked about it on the recent episode of Gleeman and the Geek. CJ Culpepper, the Twins starting pitcher prospect. I believe he finished the year at Double-A last year. He could be maybe an option for somebody. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about it. I mean, Culpepper was just such a well-regarded prospect for the Twins for a long time. Now, he really had a crappy year last year. I mean, between the injuries and the control problems, the injuries aren't all that big of a problem when you're a Rule 5 draft pick, because you can be it makes it easier to stash you. But the control problems are if they're going to try and put you in the bullpen. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm also a little worried about Fedko. Sure. I feel that breakthrough year with him. I could just see somebody kind of rolling on him and seeing maybe they could stash him as a fourth outfielder someplace as a late bloomer. We did ask a little bit about, what if there was somebody they were worried about losing. They didn't want to answer that because that's the last thing they want to do is tip people off that they should be looking at this player or looking at that player. They did just sort of say, every year we get people in our own organization are chastising us like we're going to lose this guy, we're going to lose this guy, we're going to lose this guy. They really haven't lost much. So, and with the one exception sort of being Akil Baddoo, who ended up having one great year for the Tigers and then flamed out. So
and we'll never stop hearing about it.
We'll never stop hearing about it. That's right. So, I think, they understand the limitations, they understand the risks, and we'll have to see what transpires.
Yeah. Nick, anybody come to mind for you that you'd be worried about them losing to another team possibly? Kyler Fedko, that's an interesting one to bring up, but at the same time, the Twins have as much need for that player type as any team in the big leagues right now. And if they're feeling pretty good about
it's interesting that the guys we're talking about as the top guys they might get taken are a right-handed hitting outfielder and a guy who could be a reliever next year, right?
Yeah,
which are the biggest positions they need to fill. So I think Aaron said this on one of the podcast episodes recently, where it's like, if the Twins do get poached in the Rule 5 draft and one of those guys or Kalai Rosario turns into a really good player, that's going to be such a bad look because they were right there and they were filling needs that you had immediately, and they had a lot of spots. We just talked about there's a lot of clutter. I think the name that sticks out to me and the guy, if I was another team looking at the Twin system that would intrigue me the most is Jose Olivares, which is a younger, sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum of some of these really more well-developed kind of lower ceiling guys. He's a single-A pitcher. I don't think he's pitched above single-A. He's had some control problems. He's had some injuries, but a really hard thrower. Good raw stuff, very unrefined at this point. But, if a team was able to pluck him and stick him in the back end of their bullpen and kind of steal him away through that method, that's the kind of thing that I think would scare me the most because the Twins can't afford to be losing guys like that.
Well, time will tell, I guess. We'll see what happens. I believe the Rule 5 draft is tomorrow afternoon, I want to say. So we will keep our eyes peeled for that. John, any other news and notes that you want to talk about before we try to land this plane here? What are you looking forward to the rest of the week? Do you have any bold predictions? Have you heard any other sort of rumblings that you're willing and able to share? Is somebody pointing a gun at you right now off screen telling you to shut up? I don't know.
I do have to run to a Gleeman and the Geek recording here in a little bit. Okay. But no, in 15 minutes I got. I will say this. So I don't know if you've heard this, Lou. I ended up sitting next to Derek Falvey on the flight to Orlando.
You're kidding.
and as poor guy. And as a result of that, one of the things we were talking about the Schwarber, about the Pittsburgh offering Schwarber a deal that he signed today. And since Schwarber signed today, I'll just show a little anecdote he shared with me, which was that the Twins in 2021 were in the running for signing Schwarber. That was the year after he had been non-tendered by the Cubs. It was the year before he got the big deal from the first big deal from the Phillies. And he was floating around looking for a 1 year kind of make good deal to reestablish his value. And they had a pretty significant offer into him, but they also had a significant offer into Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz wanted 2 years though. And they weren't sure they wanted to commit to Nelson Cruz for 2 years because Nelson Cruz was 86 years old.
Yep.
And so as a result of that, they kind of waited and they waited and waited and they weren't getting it. And they also had then offer out to Schwarber that they thought was competitive, but they weren't sure that Schwarber really wanted to live. They thought he wanted a bigger market.
Sure.
And so they basically went back and said they were going to talk to his agent, said, okay, we're going to offer you more money, but we're going to need an answer. And then they went to Nelson Cruz and said, we're going to throw some money at this money. And if he takes it, then our offer's off the table unless you want to take the 1-year deal. And Nelson Cruz took the 1-year deal.
Okay.
So there was a chance that at one point Schwarber could have been a Minnesota Twin in what ended up being kind of his breakout year. Now, that was also a great year for Nelson Cruz. If you recall, those first 4 months, he was absolutely on fire, and they traded into the Rays for Joe Ryan. So that worked out real well. It would have probably worked out real well either way. Schwarber, by the way, signed with the Nationals and got traded to the Red Sox that year as well, and then became a free agent and got the big contract with the Phillies. So, yeah, it was it could have worked out well either way. But I was just thought on the day that Schwarber signed, I might just mention that, that there was a decent chance he was going to be a Twin at one point in his career.
What could have been, man? That's the butterfly effect.
And that's the kind of weird crap you hear at the winter meetings. By the way, you do just hear, especially the older stuff, like, oh yeah, we can talk about this now. Okay.
That's awesome. Well, that's really fun to hear that they were in the mix for him. I'm curious to hear if who the next Kyle Schwarber is going to be for them. If they miss out on somebody this offseason, or maybe they don't, and they get lucky here. Nick, anything, any bold predictions you want to throw out there? Anything you want to say before we bid adieu?
No, my bold prediction is that they're not going to do anything major here for a while, and they're going to wait out the market, which is the least bold prediction you can make. Although I will say, if they were to make any kind of big move in the near term, I think I still could see them trading Joe Ryan, even if they're trying to lean into the contention kind of aspect. That is a move that seems to me like it could really be a baseball move, a sell high, a move that's not totally motivated by unloading payroll. So that's what I'm going to be curious about. I know there's been reports that the Red Sox have kind of pulled back on those conversations, but we'll see. There's always a lot of bluster.
I will just add on to that real quick, Nick. If that happens, I think it's going to be a major league player for major league player trade. I don't think it will be a prospect for pitcher trade, which is what we kind of anticipated before. If you're doing a sell off, that's the sort of thing that you do. But right now, I think they're looking at more like Major League Baseball for Major League Baseball player trade.
Could be juicy. Could be something to watch. My bold prediction is that the Twins will bring back 2 old friends. I think it'll be one reliever and maybe one position player that falls down to them, whether that's Luis Arias, maybe that's a Jorge Polanco. His market doesn't evolve the way he wants it to, which feels unrealistic, but someone's going to fall. And
whoever it is, it'll be a former Twin, right?
Yes, it must be, just for vibes alone. Exactly.
Nelson Cruz.
How about Joey Gallo? Joey Gallo was a relief pitcher.
Goodness.
That has been thrown out here. Just FYI.
Is he down there pitching himself?
No.
Right, nobody tell Greg. All right. Good deal. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Everybody in the audience, thank you so much for joining. Please stay tuned to Twins Daily for the rest of the winter meetings and all the off-season action. We're happy to bring it to you. We are excited to talk about it. One last comment from the audience here. Should the Twins sign Miguel Sano?
There's your former Twin.
Greg.
There he is.
Yeah,
That's
there
right.
he is.
There you go.
There he is.
All
right,
That's a Greg alias.
Hey, thank you again for joining, everyone. We will talk to you next time on Twins Daily Offseason Live. Goodbye, good night, and stay sweet.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.